Yeah, the GOAT. Logo threes are back, y'all. Logo threes are back like they never left. Caitlyn Clark doing it to him.
Instead, the moment she stepped into the gym, the atmosphere began to change almost immediately. The shift did not come from loud confidence, flashy behavior, or visible ego, but from performance alone. Her impact showed through results, the kind that naturally reshapes structure, attention, and momentum without needing announcements or dramatic displays.
Caitlyn Clark is on fire. Day 3 of Team USA camp. The girl couldn't miss. It was like throwing a rock in the ocean for Caitlyn Clark.
This mattered even more because this was not an ordinary training environment. The gym was filled with elite athletes who had spent their entire lives competing at the highest levels of basketball, including Olympic gold medalists, WNBA stars, experienced leaders, and players accustomed to being the center of attention wherever they competed. Yet, according to Sabrina, that particular week became one of the most tense and uncomfortable stretches many people inside the gym could remember.
When she was not playing with Aaliyah Boston, some of the bigs didn't know what to do with her passes. Like, there was one time where she passed it to Hamby, and Hamby, like, brought the ball down. It's like, you can't do that. Like, this is not... You have to keep it up, right?
Straight up, right.
Tension was not caused by arguments, obvious conflict, or organizational problems. Instead, it developed because the game itself seemed to be choosing direction and balance faster than many participants were ready to accept or fully understand.
Having to see Caitlyn, like, go at scouting players who were, instructed to play at a feeble level of physicality was interesting, considering how long she's been out and the fact that she's still ramping up injury.
Clark appeared genuinely happy just to be part of the experience, expressing appreciation for reconnecting with players and being involved in the basketball environment again. She arrived without hype or unnecessary attention, no dramatic entrance, no cameras constantly following her, and no visible attempt to control the room or claim importance. She simply entered the gym and focused on working.
She was just, like, so happy to be there and, like, was individually, like, telling media members how nice it was just to, like, talk to them again and, like, that she was just part of the basketball process.
However, shortly after she stepped onto the court, the energy in the gym noticeably shifted. Change was subtle but impossible to ignore for anyone paying close attention to how practices were unfolding.
And just fun to, like, see the players in a live game situation again, because you think about, like, Caitlyn hasn't played since July 15th,
Yes.
There are 4 sparks of this camp. Their season ended on September 11th, right? So it's been a long time since any of them have really played competitive basketball.
Conversations quieted whenever she handled the ball. Drills suddenly felt quicker, cleaner, and more organized. The established order built over years of reputation and expectation began to feel less certain.
Also got a quote out of Sue Bird about her being impressed with Caitlyn just being engaged while she was out and getting back to being able to play.
This was not about dismissing anyone's achievements. It reflected a deeper realization that the flow of the game was beginning to adjust around her decisions. Ball movement improved, spacing became more effective when she directed the offense, and the overall pace increased under her control. By the end of camp, one player reportedly left early, not because of injury, roster decisions, or public disagreement, but because it had become clear where the direction of play was moving. That moment gained attention because it suggested the shift was not driven by politics, coaching favoritism, marketing influence, or media hype, but by basketball naturally finding its center in real time.
A little bit about what Caitlyn looked like on the court, how much fun she was having, how important it was, and then someone else, Angel Reese on the other side, talking about Chicago. That was the article I was not expecting.
Development changed the entire conversation surrounding the camp. Question people began asking was no longer whether Caitlyn Clark belonged at Team USA camp, because for many observers that issue already felt settled. Anyone who watched her control possessions, manage tempo, and elevate the level of play could clearly recognize the influence she brought to the court.
Here's that Caitlyn Clark is truly back healthy. The three-point shot is back. The logo threes are back. And what I really liked about that second one is that was going right.
The real question that began to surface was far more uncomfortable. Was her dominance actually intimidating to the players around her, or were they simply unprepared to experience her true day-to-day level up close? There is a major difference between knowing someone's reputation and feeling their influence during every possession on the court. Watching highlights creates admiration, but defending decisions that happen faster than expected creates pressure. Seeing talent on film is one thing. Realizing how small the margin for error becomes when someone processes the game at that speed is something entirely different. For some players, that realization creates motivation and energy. For others, it becomes unsettling. That contrast is what made the moment so revealing. When the game itself begins to decide who it naturally flows through, it is not personal, yet it leaves no place to hide. Players must either adjust, adapt, and redefine their role within the new reality or confront the fact that the hierarchy they once relied on has changed. What unfolded at camp was not simply about one player standing out. It was about an entire system being exposed in real time, forcing everyone present to decide how they would respond. There is a clear difference between being aware of a player's reputation and experiencing their presence on every possession firsthand. Highlights can display skill and statistics can measure production, but neither fully prepares players for live decision-making speed. When the pace suddenly increases and reads happen almost instinctively, the margin for error disappears. Understanding why this mattered requires recognizing what Team USA training camp is usually designed to be. These camps are typically structured, professional, and predictable environments where players rotate through drills, develop chemistry, execute systems, and prepare for international competition in an organized rhythm. Even with elite athletes sharing the floor, there is usually an unspoken order guiding when players assert themselves and how roles naturally function. That familiar rhythm did not remain intact after Caitlyn Clark's arrival. Not because she intended to disrupt anything or tried to take control, but because the flow of play began revolving around her decisions. Practices felt more intense, each repetition carrying greater importance. Possessions became faster and more precise. Conversations faded whenever she touched the ball, not out of obligation but instinct. Coaches leaned forward with increased focus, and players sharpened their attention, unwilling to miss cues or opportunities. This shift was not created by hype or outside attention. It came from the natural pull elite players generate through efficient, high-level execution. Sabrina described Clark as earning her place in the truest sense, not through reputation or roster status, but by repeatedly showing that the game functioned more smoothly when it moved through her. That realization can be difficult for players accustomed to being central to the action. By the final day of camp, that truth had become impossible to ignore. Clark did not slow her pace or attempt to blend in for comfort. She maintained control of the tempo and direction throughout the sessions. According to accounts from those present, one individual struggled to accept watching the established order shift in real time. Paige Bueckers witnessed the entire process and, according to several observers, recognized what was happening almost immediately. When Clark directed the offense, the pace across the floor increased, spacing improved naturally, and ball movement became quicker and more precise, reaching teammates exactly where they needed it. Players who had previously appeared slightly out of rhythm suddenly looked synchronized, as if the game had become clearer. Coaches shifted from casual observation to detailed evaluation, adjusting strategies as practices unfolded. This was not simply a skilled guard executing plays effectively. It was a player operating at a different mental speed, someone who anticipated the game ahead of everyone else and acted without hesitation. Paige, as an elite competitor herself, understood this quickly. Rather than resisting it, she adapted and elevated her own play alongside it, demonstrating the intelligence that defines high-level basketball minds working together. Angel Reese, however, experienced the situation differently. Change did not inspire the same momentum for her. Instead, it created uncertainty, not because of a lack of talent or ability, but because the structure of play was no longer centered around her strengths. The ball no longer reached her in the same rhythm as before. Possessions no longer shifted naturally toward her presence, and the offense stopped slowing down to create isolated moments built around her strengths. Instead, the game continued moving forward without pause. As the week progressed, that reality became increasingly difficult to ignore. This contrast created a tense atmosphere, not openly hostile or dramatic, but quietly uncomfortable in the way truth often reveals itself. When the flow of the game selects its focal point, everyone else must decide whether they are willing to adjust. Some players recognize the shift and grow from it, while others struggle with losing control of a role they once understood. More than any drill or scrimmage, that dynamic made this camp feel different from any before it. The emotion at first was not anger but something more unsettling, the feeling of becoming less central to the action. Not because she lacked ability or belonging, but because the offense no longer ran through her. The ball arrived in different spots, and possession after possession unfolded without relying on her influence. During team discussions, film sessions, and quiet conversations among coaches, Caitlyn Clark increasingly became the central focus, not by request but because her impact demanded attention. Angel Reese noticed the change clearly, and her body language reflected growing frustration as the days passed. She participated in the same drills, played similar minutes, and received comparable opportunities, yet the direction of play had shifted. Tension reached its highest point during a closed scrimmage with no cameras or outside distractions, only competition and pride on display. Clark handled the point guard role with the composure of a veteran, while Paige Bueckers maintained perfect spacing across the floor. The ball moved with purpose, passes arrived precisely where they needed to be, and the offense flowed smoothly. Angel attempted to assert her presence physically, adding intensity and emotion, but the pace of the game did not slow to match that style. Instead, it accelerated, becoming sharper and more efficient. Gradually, she fell out of the natural rhythm of possessions, not because she was benched or excluded, but because the speed of play reduced her involvement. In that moment, the new order became clear. This was no longer a contest of equal control. It was a system revealing who it functioned best through. Coaches recognized the shift and quietly documented observations while practices continued. Sabrina also emphasized an important detail about Clark's style. The deep three-point shots and difficult passes were impressive, but what stood out most was precision. Clark did not simply pass to open teammates. She delivered the ball exactly where scoring opportunities became easiest, with perfect timing. Some players were unprepared for that level of accuracy, occasionally mishandling passes or disrupting plays simply because they were not ready for elite playmaking speed. Clark demanded readiness without needing to say a word. Camp itself emphasized a higher level of physicality, even tougher than typical WNBA competition, and scout players were instructed to match that intensity. Clark embraced the contact, absorbed pressure, and continued directing the game with control, answering any remaining doubts about her toughness or adaptability. By the final day, the gym carried an unusual quietness. Execution looked clean and organized as Clark directed actions like an experienced floor leader, calling adjustments and finishing plays confidently. Angel Reese touched the ball less during key possessions, not as punishment but as a natural outcome of how the offense evolved. When the final whistle sounded, the atmosphere felt settled, as if everyone already understood the conclusion without needing it spoken aloud. Angel left without creating a scene, and a silence followed her exit. Coaches exchanged glances while players avoided eye contact, each aware that something significant had taken place. This was not personal drama or ego-driven conflict. It was basketball revealing its reality. When elite players share the floor, the game itself determines what works, what does not, and who becomes the center of movement. Reputation and past success cannot override that process. Angel Reese has previously spoken about feeling dissatisfied with her current WNBA situation and wanting an environment where her strengths are fully utilized and her role feels more central. That context helps explain why this experience felt different for her. Team USA camp was not just another competitive setting, it was a space where performance left no room to hide from reality. The offense did not revolve around attention or volume but around decision-making, timing, and control. The ball consistently found Caitlyn Clark because doing so improved the flow of play. Pace followed her leadership because the game functioned more effectively that way. Coaches did not need to force the adjustment, and teammates did not need formal agreement. It happened naturally, possession by possession, as the clearest path toward winning basketball. That is often the hardest truth to accept. Clark did not demand control or seek attention. She earned influence through consistent reads, precise passing, and elevating those around her. The game moved through her because it worked better when it did. That level, players face only two choices: adapt to the system the game creates and discover new ways to contribute, or decide that the environment no longer fits them. There is no middle ground and no way to force the game backward. In the end, Angel chose to walk away.